Welcome. My name is Jim Gavin, and I want to thank you for taking this time to be here. And although we can't actually see one another during this time and certainly can't touch one another physically at least, let's hope that we can make something out of this experience that will be deeply meaningful for you. So I think a way to start this is by offering you a quote from Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. In the middle of the road of my life, I awoke in a dark wood where the true way was wholly lost to me. I think it's fair to say that many of us feel as if we're in a dark wood and where the true way, whatever that will be in our future, seems wholly lost or at the very least unknown at this moment. I'd like to take some time at the beginning before we move into a self-coaching process to review some ideas that I think are important, at least they're important to me in this time in terms of understanding some of the dynamics that perhaps all of us are experiencing. So before we do that, I'd like to take a few moments to ask you to close your eyes if you're willing. And with eyes closed, if you would find your breath, notice your breath. Slow it down slightly if you can. Inhale more deeply. Feel the breath traveling throughout your body. Feel it going down to your toes and to the ends of your fingers, to your nose and your ears. And then breathing out, long, slow exhalation. And one more time, and imagining your breath as if it can gather up the various experiences of stress, tension, disconnection. And on your exhale, just breathe out. Let that go for now. And if you need to take another breath at any point to do the same thing, gathering up, collecting, and letting go, please do that. I'd like to begin with a quote from a poem by Julia Fehrenbacher. And the poem is entitled, What Silence Said. What Silence Said. This is what silence said to me today. Trust what you can't see. Move forward, despite the wobbly groundlessness of I don't know. Breathe, love, create, show up as you are every day, no matter what. Go to where the wildflowers grow and say thank you for it all, for the weeds, cracks, sunbeams, and for that hand on your shoulder, the forever throb of ache, knowing that it's all a doorway. It is all a doorway, a hand leading you back to grace. It is all a doorway, a hand leading you back to grace. There are three strands of thought that I want to offer at the beginning as we move into this time together from three seminal thinkers. And the first is Yuval Noah Harari, the author of Sapiens, Homo Deus, and most recently, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. He reminds us that we are typically afraid of change because humanity, us, we fear the unknown. And then he says that the single greatest constant of history is that everything changes. And certainly we know that in this time. And when he was writing, well before this crisis had begun, he said, "How do you live in an age of bewilderment when the old stories have collapsed and the new stories have not yet emerged to replace them? How do you live in an age of bewilderment?" I think that we collectively are living in an age of bewilderment, no one fully knowing how this is going to unfold, but all of us experiencing how it is unfolding in this moment, which has perhaps some positive aspects, but a lot of challenge and a great deal of suffering for millions of human beings. In a recent CBC interview, Harari commented that this virus, seems to use our best human qualities against us: connection, communication, and empathy, so that we can't really access fully our humanity in this time. And some of that we might be experiencing in this moment as you listen to my voice and you're on the other end of the internet collecting whatever you can, which is different than if we were sitting together having a conversation. Harari said that to survive and flourish in this world of bewilderment, that we will need a great deal of mental flexibility and great reserves of emotional balance. He says we will have to repeatedly let go of some of what we know best and feel at home with the unknown. I think many of us are feeling not so much at home, but we certainly are feeling an experience of the unknown in this time. In one of his early comments, he talked about the connection that we need as human beings. He said that in order as human beings for us to flourish, we need to ground ourselves in intimate communities. If we don't belong to intimate communities, we humans feel lonely and alienated. And I think that that is certainly the challenge that millions of people are experiencing in this moment as they are in isolation or disconnection in various ways from friends, family, neighbors, the normal to-dos of life in interaction. The second strand of thought that I'd like to connect, it comes from the works of Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychiatrist, a Holocaust survivor, and the author of Search for Meaning. His quotes, I think, are well known to many of us. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think that that's what so many of us feel right now, that I can't affect very much outside of where I am, and it is left to me to change. And what do I need to do to change? Thus, in a certain way, the focus of our time together to look at what it is that you personally might want to change in adaptation to this experience. Frankl was writing at a much earlier time than Yuval Harari, but the message was very much the same. Frankl was writing in the post-World War II era, and he offered us this. He said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." He was talking about our need as human beings to find meaning in our experience and indeed in our suffering, because so many people are suffering at different levels in this time. Interestingly, he also added that there is no hierarchy to suffering. We can't compare our pain to someone else and say, oh, she's suffering more or less than me. Suffering is suffering, and I think all of us have at different moments, for me, waking up at 3 in the morning with flooded mind and fears that come to me unbidden, And at that time, my defenses are quite down, so they take hold of me at times. Another quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, everything can be taken from a person, but one thing, the last of our human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Again, echoing the notion that it is up to us to choose what we need to do. We are challenged to change. A final piece from Frankl. He thought that he had found the ultimate key in this sentence. He says, I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human thought and human poetry and belief have to impart. And it is this, that salvation of humanity is through love and in love. And I think that as we reach out to family and friends and we experience them more wholly in this time, we realize that love is indeed a big part of the answer. Final set of thoughts come from Thomas Merton, a 20th century Christian mystic. I want to just parenthetically note that I have found that, ironically, at times in this global disruption, there's some portion of the population tells me that they're finding some sense of relief, a relief from the strains of everyday existence, the incessant demands, the 24/7 nature of work. Amidst all the chaos, fear, personal and financial worry, many people have said that the rhythm of their lives somehow feels more human. They work, they play with their kids, they connect with family and old friends. I think that Merton captured it in his notion about what our lives have been like pre-COVID. He says, there is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which we easily succumb, and it is the contemporary violence of overactivity and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, in his words, perhaps the most common form of overwork's innate violence, to allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our over-engagement destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys even the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the roots of our inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful. Think about that. And then note, this was written by Merton in the mid 1960s, more than half a century ago, talking about work at that time. And in my perception, it has just sped up so majorly. It is an incredible 24/7, all the time, being on reality for so many of us. And this COVID experience is offering us perhaps a different view of what might be possible for our lives. So those were three thoughts that I thought were important to review. And then I want to make a couple of other comments before we go to the self-coaching experience. We are indeed in a time of global disruption. And I think everyone at some level is a little bit scared. So you may know the name Martin Seligman. He's the founder of positive psychology. He's the person who put the silver lining on the cloud. He's the one who, when you look at difficulties in life, he turns the lemons into lemonade. very positive, affirming, proactive human being who has offered so much. And of his own experience, he says that in this time, my thoughts go to the extreme. I'm sure I'll get infected. Once infected, I definitely will get a severe case. And being in my 70s, I will die. So we're all perhaps a little bit scared at this time. And Seligman offers us some hopeful thoughts in a process. He says, first of all, ask yourself, what's the worst possible situation? Just think about that for a moment. What's the worst? And then he says, force yourself, if you need to think about what's the best possible outcome. And now consider what's most likely to happen. And finally, develop a plan for what you think is the most realistic scenario. So as we think about positivity in this time, Kate Bowler, an historian at Duke Divinity School, said that many people are grieving, and be mindful that you can't always put a happy face on it. She says, I think it's very painful for everyone to know that there's just not a lot of room between anybody and the very edge. How many people in our own network have sat with the fear that if I contract this, given my physical condition, given my own vulnerability, my chances of survival are very poor. Think of all of the people who have been touched by the loss of significant others in their lives. Kate Bowler says, the idea that we're all supposed to be positive all the time has become an obsession. But the problem is when it expects that people who are suffering, which is pretty much everyone right now, that they're somehow also supposed to find the silver lining or not to speak realistically about their own circumstances. And in line with that, Dr. Annalise Singh, a counseling psychologist at the University of Georgia, tells us that deep down in our bones, we know what we have to do. She says, when things fall apart, we relearn how to be. We remember our connection to humanity. We are reminded that our time on this earth is most precious and briefer than we think. We grieve in connection. We experience the pain of isolation, uncertainty. We forget we need people, and then we remember, and then we reach out. And still, the earth revolves, life moves on. Remember, she says, we're each trying to find our own way right now. And she gives us this final piece. I hope you know it's 100% okay if you are struggling and that you take a risk to share your human vulnerability with others who can support you. So I'll leave the final word in this regard to Pema Chodron, when things fall apart. Listen to this quote and then try to embody it, feel it in yourself. Take it in. You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather. You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather. May that be so as you reflect on your own experience, knowing that you are the sky. Okay, so we're at that time. This is a private, personal time. I would ask that you make space for this. If you can't right now, then come back to it at a later point. And making the space for it means that you put yourself in a comfortable sitting position. You may want to lie down. It's up to you. And just make sure that your environment supports you in this time so that you won't be interrupted as we go through this. So the process has the acronym RAVEN, representing 5 words. And I didn't know that that was going to be what this process was named, but it turned out that way. And interestingly, when I began to look into the meaning of the raven symbolically, I found some interesting things. That the raven, because of its appearance, because of its sound, its harsh, insistent call, raven is often associated with loss and represents an ill omen. Yet its symbolism is far more complex than that. As a talking bird, the raven also represents prophecy and insight. And ravens in stories often act as spirit guides, connecting the material and the immaterial worlds. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to connect the reality that you are experiencing outside and your internal world and find out what you most need to do to help yourself, and in helping yourself, to help others, and in helping others, you help this world that is suffering so much at this time. So take a few deep breaths, slowly, gathering up stray thoughts, sensations. And as you gather them up and you begin your exhale, let them go, release, let go, let go. You don't need those distractions right now. Breathing in, right down to your toes and your fingers, to your nose and ears, the skin on your face, gathering up, breathing out, releasing. And as you begin to soften and open to your inner world, to the immaterial, we begin this process with the first letter, R, for recognize. With your eyes closed, continuing to breathe softly and fully, notice how you are at this time. Notice what is alive for you and try to connect in a deep way to the things that have been disrupting you, to the impact of this perhaps 2-month period and all of the changes it has wrought and how you have coped, whether that has been in terms of your family life, your relationships, your ability to connect, perhaps your work or the absence of work or the too much work. So where has this all hit you? How is all of this alive inside of you in this moment? Permit yourself, if you will, to experience the emotionality that comes with all that you have been through in this time. Allow yourself to feel it, to know it, recognize it, perhaps name it. It might have a name like fear. It might have a name like overwhelm or anger or irritability or being out of control, or a sense of not knowing, being in the dark, and that being frightening. Recognize what your experience is. And now, moving to the second letter, A for allow. As you sit here or lie there, wherever you are, holding inside of you an awareness of what you're living with, what you have been experiencing. Imagine yourself embracing this in a gentle and compassionate way. Think, for example, of a small child who's very upset, who doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know how to change things, and you pick that child up in your arms and you hold that child. And as you hold that child, you may sing, you may rock, you may cuddle, and you do what you can to soften the edges of the experience for this little one. Imagining that and imagining you holding you, really holding you in a way that embraces what is happening, a certain acceptance, an acceptance of, oh yes, this is happening and it really is upsetting. Without judgment, without a should, without a have to, without a stiff upper lip. Just allow yourself to have all the feelings that you are having in this time. Embrace them. And as you hold you, all of you, all of the fragmented, disjointed, disconnected, disrupted aspects of you in this time, the not knowing, we're going to move into the third letter, V, for vision. And vision involves a process of, as you sit here in this moment in 2020, you yet are able to take a higher position, as if you float up out of your body to an altitude above you, above your entire life, above your entire life, so that you can see back to the very beginning of you. And you can even see those special moments when you were challenged beyond your capacities, or so you thought, but you overcame. You were able to be triumphant. There was a resiliency in you that you had not at that time recognized, and you got through it. And yes, it may not have been easy. And yes, there may have been great pain, but you survived and you learned so much. And you look back at that time, as you are doing now, and you say, it was a gift, strange gift, but it was a gift. And I came out of that stronger. And you have so many moments like that in your life. Allow yourself to find some of those pivotal moments when you rose above it all, and where your brilliance and talent and competency shone, and you came through the darkness into the light. Recognize right now your resilience, recognize your strengths, and see yourself in this moment holding what you are holding at this time, now, and bring to bear on this moment your awareness of your great competency, of your profound love and compassion, your ability to overcome. And imagine yourself now moving into your future. So from this altitude above the present moment, you can get a glimpse into the future. And in that glimpse into the future, what do you see? You see yourself facing whatever is coming your way with a transformative energy, with a belief in yourself, with a knowledge that, yes, I can. And you bring that into the future and you carve the path. You change you. And in changing you, you change the world. One more part of this process, one more part. As you hover at an altitude above you, holding you in this moment, as you hover there, you widen your gaze and you look beyond the doorways and portals in your present environment. You look outside the door and there may be neighbors, there are people, and you see them and you can see deeply into them from this altitude. And from this altitude, you see what they're carrying, what they're holding. And you widen your gaze even more. And you see people in other neighborhoods, in other countries, in other places on this globe, all around this globe. You see people and what they are carrying at this time, not in a way of comparison, not in a way of judging, but in the way of knowing that, hey, we're all in this. This is the intimate community. We're all intimately impacted by this global disruption. And we are coming through it moment by moment. And I see you, I see all that others are carrying, and I see me carrying me. And we're all moving forward in creating a greater future. Vision of self, past, present, future. Vision of self in relationship to all of the world, moving from the I, from the ego to the eco, to the ecosystem that surrounds us with compassion and openness to all that we are suffering. Taking in a deep breath and letting go of those visions, allowing yourself to come back into your body in this moment, holding what you are holding. And then I will ask you a question, and to this question, allow the answer to emerge, not necessarily with rational thought, but what comes to mind in this moment? What rises up? So the question, engage. The question, engage, is what do I need to do? What action do I need to take at this time? What would be most useful for me, for those I love, for the world? What is the one little change that I am being challenged to make in this time? What small act can I bring forth What pattern in my own behavior can I commit to shifting? What's something that I want to do, that I need to do, that I will do? Allow it to arise, allow it to come up, allow the fullness of the vision of what you need to do to make itself known to you. Take a moment, see it, feel it, know its truth. What do you need to do? What would be helpful? What's important for you to do? And then hold on to it. Hold on to this knowing in this moment as we move to our final letter, N, for nourish. Taking a deep breath, gather up all of those experiences that you can let go of in this time. The emotions that may have arisen, some of the tightness in your body, just gather it up with your breath. Release it on the exhalation. Let it go. Let it go. Let it all go. You don't need it. Breathe in, breathe out. Let go. Relax even deeper. So our final piece, to nourish. You've been through a process. If you followed along in this work at this time. And when we're working on something at a deep level, it sometimes has a very profound effect, and sometimes we need to just rest after we've done that deep work. And so the question is, how can I nourish myself right now as we complete our time together? What can I do to hold myself with loving kindness? What can I do that would make me feel good right now? It may be getting up and taking a walk when we complete this. It may be calling a friend. It may be holding yourself. It may be taking a short nap. Just know that it is good to nourish yourself so that you can have more capacity for yourself, for your own life, and for this suffering world. And as we close this process, I want to offer a little inspiration that comes from some people I know. And I think that the message here is that each of us has a part in this global disruption, and each of us can do something. We can all pitch in, we can foster hope and not fear. We can make things happen wherever we can. Leslie, Nick, and Jake, founders of a small company, Midday Squares, who have, for the past couple of years, really put everything on the line in their work. And then COVID hit, and it hit hard. And even though their business that they had nurtured and struggled with so intensely for so long was at serious risk, they pivoted. They wanted to speak to the world. They wanted to offer a new message, a message of hope. So let me just take a moment and set this up. And this is what they offered. As it says, The news headlines have been driving fear and negativity.
Hi everyone. Hey everyone. Hi there. Paul, Andrew Meda, Phil Garnier.
Tara Tomolka.
Hi guys, I'm David.
And I'm Julie.
Julia.
Steph per diem.
Hi, my name is Michelle Tumandi.
And Simon.
Hi everyone, I'm Dave. And I'm John.
Gus Klemos.
I'm Peter Neal.
Laura Incognito.
Francis Lowe. Jake Carl.
Leslie Carls.
Nick Saltarelli.
Mark Wandler.
My name is Steven Sager.
Liz Gallagher.
I'm Evelyn Jurassi.
Chris Minion.
Julia Kirwak.
Lean on me when you're not strong. I'm Max.
I'm Dina Rock.
Hi, I'm Carly Steiner. I'm Sheena.
Tony Allen. Benjamin Umiskin. Ward Epstein.
I'm Kara.
Hannah James.
Marc-Antoine.
Hi, my name is Philippe. Steve Valentine here.
Seguimos Leader here.
So my message of encouragement to the world right now is something that my mom always says, this too shall pass.
It is a challenging time right now with a lot of fear and insecurity, which is normal.
The number one thing we need to do is adapt in these types of times. The worst thing you can do is make no change at all.
Remember that we can stay connected to our family and friends despite our current situation.
Staying connected to your loved ones and your community through video chat, social media.
Keep having virtual breakfast with grandma. Keep having virtual dinner with Bestie.
Words really do matter. So message your mom or an old friend and just let them know how much you love and appreciate them.
Lift each other up because we're all in this together.
I've witnessed more solidarity and unity in our society than ever before.
We're going to get through this, and the world is going to look different when we come out the other side. You guys, this is our opportunity to rewrite the future.
Tomorrow is always a better day.
Provide support to one another however we can.
We all need to spread compassion, love, positivity.
Keep your immunity strong by still not forgetting to eat real food, fruits, vegetables.
Right now is no better time to improve yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Or finding time for that creative activity you've been meaning to do.
The space that we have is giving us an opportunity to reflect on what matters most.
Love, kindness, friendship.
I am looking for silver linings, and I am finding them everywhere.
Find something to make you smile every day, like Charlie.
Amongst all of the chaos going on right now, it's so important to figure out what you're grateful for, because as little as it might seem right now, I can promise you that there's someone out there who has less.
Also, a big shout out to the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, the cleaners, the janitors, the grocery store clerks.
Everyone who's making sure that we're all staying safe and staying updated on all the information.
I'm also super grateful to every single one of you that is staying home and practicing social distancing.
The truck drivers that are bringing the products from the warehouses to the stores.
And especially for the local food community.
And small businesses working through this together.
We are really, really grateful right now to all our factory team.
How we managed to work together, even though we're apart.
Thankful for all our employees, but especially our warehouse staff.
We really got united in this crisis and jumped into a crazy high-performing mode.
Production team who is continuing to make our product.
Without them, we wouldn't be able to continue to nourish you.
We want to know,
Who are you?
who are you thankful for?
Your
Thank you, Nick, Leslie, Jake, for your heart. We're at the end of our time, and just wanted to note that I've seen some reflection of a name for this time, which is called the Age of Realization. May it be so. May we all realize something incredibly important and precious in our lives. I'd like to close with another piece from Julia Fehrenbacher, Holy Whispers, Holy Whispers. Each sip of life speaks to you in delicious, holy whispers. Quiet down, and listen. Each sip of life speaks to you in delicious, holy whispers. Quiet down, and listen. So thank you to the John Molson Executive Center team who inspired and supported this effort. Kaylin Woodward, Anik Labrie, and Sandra Nickel. Blessings, thank you. And thank you all for joining us in this time. May you enter this period and thrive and flourish in the ways that you can in this work.